we're ready to proceed to the next stage of our for today's program. And what is important about the previous experience all of us had before this summit is that after the COVID strike, we had to face the fact that our usual learning process has to be reimagined. The way we teach people cybersecurity, whoever you are, a corporation or the university, you had to reimagine the process itself and to somehow adopt it to a fully digital education. So what we would like to talk throughout these 2 days is about cybersecurity technical trainings, cybersecurity education, online or offline, or something in between. What is better? How we may make things better. And in order to kick off this discussion, we start this session, which is literally called Technical Training, Online versus Offline, which we're going to hold in 2 formats. So our first speaker for this session is Katja, who is the Director of Operations at a startup, at a company which is doing cybersecurity skills training. The name of the company is Cympire. So Katja will be present online as the representative of online educational approach. Katja, good morning.
Good morning.
Perfect. So I assume you hear me well?
Yes.
Great.
I can hear you.
So we're happy to see you here today. The speaker who is going to be like the opponent to Katja representing online education would be the person who has his experience in offline trainings for already 25 years, and our constant academic partner, Stephen Fernall, the professor of cybersecurity in the University of Nottingham. To Stephen, I will give a word a bit later. But first of all, I'll ask Katja to start with her introduction of what are the ultimate benefits of online skills, cybersecurity skills training in comparison to the offline. Katja, the digital stage is yours, please.
Thank you, Evgenia, and thank you to Kaspersky for inviting us. I'm very happy to virtually, at least, to be with you guys in Athens. And I'm going to take the next few minutes to explore some of the benefits of online training, specifically in the cybersecurity industry, but also with a little bit of a broader angle. And I want to start with a few interesting numbers and then dive into the cybersecurity. And I'm going to try to share my screen. And Evgenia, you tell me if you can see it. Can everybody see my screen? Or?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I think the first thing we have to do when we start with this discussion, online versus offline training, is really to mention the elephant in the room, and that is that while it's been a trend to move things online and to create new tools for online learning over the last 10 to 20 years, and we see that, for example, in 2019, we had around 20% of undergraduates taking at least one online course at university level. This, of course, has been turned upside down in 2020 with the pandemic, when 98% of universities had to move all of their classes online within a matter of weeks. So a lot of the best practices that we have collected over the last 20 years really became accelerated in the last 2 years, especially in the academic sector, but also, of course, in the corporate world. So just to give some very obvious advantages of online learning before we look at the cybersecurity side of it. So, and these statistics were taken from the World Economic Forum. On average, students retain 25 to 60% more information when learning online versus in-class traditional formats. Also, online learning requires 40 to 60% less learning time, mainly due to the fact that learning can be more tailored to the individual and their needs. Of course, improved access, more students from around the world can join programs if it's held online. health. We don't have to even mention that one. And gaining practical experience. And that's something that I want to come back to when I discuss the cybersecurity industry and how online learning can really benefit in that industry. Just, I wanted to bring this up. I came across this a few days ago and I thought it was very interesting. The important part about this, 37% of students' perception believe that online learning is better for them than face-to-face instruction. 45%, also a very big number, think that it's equally effective. And I think that says a lot. So how do we incorporate online learning into the cybersecurity training industry? And this is where I've been working on for the last 2 years. Cympire has a training platform for cybersecurity professionals and also for universities. So we use it a lot in the university context. And we're adding this online training to in-class instruction. And we think really that's the most ideal way to teach. And where does that really come from, or where did the idea come from to move training online, especially for cybersecurity, is that cybersecurity teams in the corporate world, where the students at your universities will head to right after they finish their studies, are often nowadays underskilled, understaffed, and unprepared. Understaffed, that's something that you as universities are working on very strongly to create more programs to allow more students to study cybersecurity so that we can fill that workforce gap. What we deal with is mainly the unpreparedness. And by that, we mean, we believe that right now, cybersecurity training, whether at university or other academic institution, is still very theory-based. And the practical aspect is often a little bit left behind. And by that, we basically mean once these students enter the workforce, that's often the first time that they actually experience a cyber attack. And in that case, it would take them a long time to understand what's happening because they're seeing it for the first time. So we want to add that aspect to university courses, to academia, in order to give that practical experience before they enter the workforce and make them more prepared. So how do we achieve this change? By improving cybersecurity, by adding this to curriculums already during the studies at university, at academic institution, but also we see it now more and more at high school level in grades 11 and 12, and incorporating the best practices that we've learned from online learning, not only in the last 2 years, but there was a lot of best practices that came out of that, but also in the 10, 20 years before that. So the solution in our case, and I can only speak for Cympire because that's what I've been working on in the last 2 years, is to move to cloud-based training and assessment platforms and incorporate these into curriculums in cybersecurity courses, whether it's as training modules to allow the students to train practically on the topics that they are taught in theory, but also for professors as an assessment tool. So some of the key features of our cyber range, but there are also others out there, of course, is, for example, in this one called CyWarrior, 80 training scenarios that are already ready for professors at universities we work with. They can very easily choose which cyber topics they want to address and use these practical training sessions to complement their lectures. Also to learn how to build network architectures in real life. So there are tools in these platforms, specifically in ours, that allow students to gain that practical experience, to see how do I build it safely, and so on. To learn in an environment using the tools that the students, once they enter the workforce, will likely encounter and that they will have to use in order to identify cyber attacks in real life. So there's integration to these tools. And lastly, assessment of students accurately. So we, on the one hand, we make it interesting for the students, but we also take workload away from professors, from teachers, by allowing them to very accurately assess their students down to the different topics and to assign grades, and then very easily export these files from the system. The last benefit I want to touch on before I hand over to my opponent or colleague in this sense is gamification. I think that's one of the biggest best practices and learnings that we have made in the industry when it comes to cyber education, that it's extremely effective. Not only is it fun for the students and wants to get them engaged, but also it improves performance. I took one statistic here from Science Direct that says 35% improvement in student performance, but there are certainly many others out there, and I think this is quite conservative. So lastly, before I give the floor to my colleague, is just to show some use cases where it has been used in academia or is being used at the moment. And again, I can only speak for ourselves, but for example, in Israel, the Technion, the leading academic institution for cybersecurity studies, has created a war room, which is basically a wing where students can, on the one hand, be taught in lecture halls, but also get that practical experience and go after class, engage with the program, engage with the training scenarios, and beef up their skills. We also have programs in one of the Gulf states, the University of Fredericton in Canada, Colombia, and most recently, we're starting engagements with the KIT, Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany, where we're hoping to also forge a partnership in order to bring that practical training to their cybersecurity programs. So, Evgenia, that was it for my part. I'm very happy to hear the other side of it and then to engage in some discussion.
Yeah, Katja, thank you very much for the introduction. But before I give the floor to Steven, just if you could please, the ultimate benefits, in your opinion, of online trainings that cannot be achieved offline, like maybe 2-3 bullets. Well, gamification, I guess, is maybe one of those, and also?
I think gamification is a very important one. I think access is a very important one in today's world, to allow more people to get into the cybersecurity industry, which is very much needed now with the workforce challenge. I think those are the two main ones, but also just the tools that technology nowadays offers are not replaceable by in-class lectures. I think it needs to be a hybrid solution where both theory and practice are taught together already at the university level in order to solve the workforce challenge we're experiencing today.
Great, thank you, Steven. Now I would like to invite you to the stage and share your opinion on what are the ultimate benefits of online cybersecurity skills trainings that can never or hardly be moved to the online trainings, please. Just use?
Yeah, right. Oh, now I can hear me. Can you hear me, ladies and gentlemen? Good morning. Let's try that bit again. Good morning. Excellent. Now, you see, I'm not used to doing this now. I've not done this for about 18 months, standing up in front of people and doing this. So, if I get a bit scared and hide behind the wall, it's because I'm not used to seeing people. I'm used to seeing sort of circles on the screen and letters in them, which signify that there's people there, but I'm not used to what they are. Okay, so look, I'm not against online delivery at all. In fact, I've created quite a few online materials myself in my time, so if you go and look, you'll find some of that online. I looked younger then, perhaps. But I think it has its place, and I don't think it's a complete replacement for doing things in a face-to-face context. So let's put this to the test a minute. If I was to take out all of the potential barriers of the cost of doing it, the time for doing it, etc., and just to give you the opportunity to attend an online lecture, online meeting, or the equivalent thing face-to-face, which would you prefer? So hands up. Actually, actual hands up, not pressing a hands up button. Hands up, not, you don't know what you're putting your hands up for yet. I mean, hands up if you'd prefer to do it online. Okay, so for the benefit of people who couldn't see, there were 2 hands there. Hands up if you prefer to do it face to face. Oh, there seem to be a few more hands there. Now that's odd, isn't it? Hands up if you didn't put your hands up for either. And hands up if you have no hands. Okay, right. So it would seem then that we prefer the offline way of doing it. So let's think a little bit more then. We've been doing it online for quite a while. How many of you feel your experience and your behavior is different when you're doing it online? Okay. How many of you attend these things with your cameras off? Yeah, I don't like you people when you do that, you see. Because I'm sat there, in that context, I'm the educator, the lecturer, whatever you want to call it, and I'm sat there looking at lots of black spaces with names or initials or something, or maybe a picture. Maybe somebody's put a picture there, so I have a vague indication of what they look like. unless they put a picture of a rabbit or something like that. And then if I ever do meet them face to face, I'm quite surprised. They don't sort of bound in with big ears and a fluffy tail, and I get confused. So we behave differently as learners. And it also affects the experience for the educator, because I can't see, if people are paying attention. How many of you, when you've got your cameras off, might be doing something other than participating or paying attention to the session you're meant to be in? Now, come on, we're amongst friends here. Because I know I sometimes, you're videoing me, so now people know that in sessions where I'm supposed to be paying attention, if my camera's not on, I might not be. Okay? How many of you would sit here now today with, I don't know, a screen in front of you while I'm talking to you, or a bag over your heads, or just cover your face completely with something so I couldn't see your expression? You wouldn't do it, would you? How many of you would just turn your seats around and turn your back to me? I mean, you might like to, because I'm not very visually appealing, but you wouldn't do it because it's not the norm. But in online delivery, we seem to do that. That's the equivalent when we turn the cameras off. We're signifying that we're behaving differently. So that changes the whole education experience. Now, Katja mentioned that there was for some reason, there was a huge upsurge in our online delivery with universities. We went from 19.5% doing some sort of online delivery to, 98.5? I suppose the other 1.5 didn't do any delivery during COVID. But did they do it well? They adapted, and they had to adapt. The online delivery that they were doing then it wasn't the choice they would have made. It wasn't the way they were planning to deliver that material. It was an adaptation. And I think that often is the way that we are dealing with things online. Yes, we can do it, but does it make it the optimum way? So Katja mentioned various practical tools and things that we can utilize and that we can do online, but we can do practical things in a face-to-face context, in a properly equipped lab, properly provisioned. I'm not saying that face-to-face delivery has to be just about lectures. Certainly not. You would expect there to be practical delivery and hands-on opportunity. But you would be doing it in a context where, you can actually do like I'm doing now. The person delivering the session, and it would be a person delivering the session, not just people sat there using systems and doing things, just in isolation. You can actually observe what's going on. You can interact. Somebody can put their hand up if they don't understand what's going on, or they can, strangely turn to the person next to them and ask, or they can be working in groups effectively. So there's lots of opportunities we get to enrich the experience by doing it in a face-to-face context. And that thing about interaction, not just between the educator and those being taught, but between each other. Have you tried to do a group activity online with Zoom or Teams? Some sort of breakout room or something like that? How many? Come on, now, so remember, hands up, because I can't tell otherwise. Hands up, how many? Right, so half of you roughly. How many of you found that easy to do? A couple of hands, a few won't. So not so many hands. And how many think that it came out as effective as if you'd been able to just sit round a table or sort of sit in a little group, turn your chairs around and talk to each other face to face, or sit round a computer and do it in that way? Would it have been better to do it the latter way? Hands up if you think it would have been easier to do it physically. Okay, and I agree. And that's actually in cybersecurity, just relating it back to our topic. We talk about the skills that we need to develop amongst the cybersecurity practitioners and the professional. I'll put the phone away because I actually had some notes there. I don't seem to be using them. I'm just rambling. So we talk about these skills that we need to develop for the cybersecurity practitioners. One of the skills that it is indicated quite regularly in the workforce studies that we want cybersecurity professionals to have, and quite often as students, they don't have these capabilities or skills initially either, is the ability to communicate, to collaborate, to have those interpersonal interaction skills. And if we're doing it online, then it tends to foster that, well, okay, in some cases it can be self-paced, it can be individual tailored learning. But that actually means in many cases you're not doing something which is engendering that collaboration. And if you want people to work together and to develop those skills that will serve them in the organization, then getting them face to face, getting them to need to look at other people, to look at the visual cues that they get when discussing, talking, feedback, that transactional nature, that's far easier to get to happen in a face-to-face situation. You can force some of it online, but it doesn't work as well, okay? And I suppose just also think about, why are we here? Last year, we did this online. This year, we're all back face-to-face. What does that tell us about the opportunities that we see in doing it one way versus another? And at that point, because everyone has stood up and is looking at me, I'll stop talking now. That's my bit, okay?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Don't leave the stage, please. Yeah, because we continue with just the same question as I had for Katja. Short, like 2-3 bullets, ultimate benefits of offline that you consider.
Okay, so for me, I think main things are engagement, the opportunity for you to be engaged with the activity, and also attention. It's far easier for me as an educator to get your attention and to ensure I've got your attention in an offline setting, if I can see you, if I can interact with you, than if you're all online with your cameras turned off.
Great, thank you very much. Can we please have Katja back in order, yeah, so we're here again. The two of our speakers representing real offline and real online. So my question for you at the moment is, do you think, is it possible to fully automate the cybersecurity training, for example, in the online format, to completely remove interpersonal cooperation in between the teacher or, I don't know, consultant, whoever, and the student, and thus still create a very high-level professional in the field? Anybody who would volunteer to answer first?
Yeah, I think Stephen and I are not so far off in our arguments. I think, at least from our perspective, the ideal way is to teach in a hybrid setting, to have some in-class or face-to-face interaction. It's definitely, there's a lot of value in that, and we do believe in that. But I think the future is heading forward, and we need to adopt technology in order to make teaching more effective. And we need to find engaging ways and interesting ways to solve that workforce challenge that the cybersecurity is seeing right now. And I think a very important part to that is to incorporate technology into cybersecurity training.
So I suppose, yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And my answer to your question would be, yes, you could automate it to the extent you say, and you would get a result, but it wouldn't necessarily be the optimum result. So you'll have something, you'll have somebody who is trained, but you would have more value by getting the trainer involved and having that opportunity for interaction.
Great, thank you very much. The question that is, I would say maybe rather to Stephen, because you have this experience of collecting feedback from your students for the last year and a half. So what is that students missed most in their training during the pandemic when they were forced to go online? And what is that they miss maybe now about their previous 1.5 years of doing completely online?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure the thing they missed most was me. No, was other people. The opportunity to interact genuinely with their peers on the program. Yeah, not necessarily so much the academics, but that sense of the learning community, particularly in the university context, because that, for those students last year, many of them, that's what they'd signed up for. They didn't apply for university knowing that COVID was going to be around and prevent them from attending it. Now, as they're transitioning back to campus, and we're in the UK, we're currently still in a bit of a mixed mode, depending on the different universities. But what I think some of them are missing now is the thing that Katja was alluding to. It's the flexibility. It's the fact that previously they could, be attending the session to whatever degree they were participating from their bed, from their home, and maybe at a different time of day if they were doing it, watching the video rather than having to attend a live session.
Great, thank you. And Katja, question rather to you, with regards to the experience you have in Cympire, what are there any skills to the moment, the technical skills that cannot be transferred to the online training? Did you face any case when you understood that you're not able to do this training just because?
With the platform that we have built, we have not experienced that. But like I said before, we also believe that the hybrid training solution is the best. And the universities that we do work with, they use both in face-to-face teaching and incorporating our assessment platform and technology. So I believe that that's the way forward.
Yeah, so it finally brings me to the last question we have for this session. In your opinion, what is the optimum way of hybridization in between the online and offline delivery? What is the optimal way to merge those two to make it the best for the students and for the teachers as well?
I think we need to incorporate much more practical learning into current curriculums at universities and academies, because that is what the students, when they move to the corporate world, that's going to be their main focus. They're going to be actually working, with the cybersecurity tools, encountering the different attack vectors. I like to use the analogy of a flight simulator. Would you want to fly in a passenger plane with a pilot who has never practiced their practical skills in a flight simulator and just attended, theoretical classes? I'm guessing the answer is no. And I think we need to take the same logic to the cybersecurity industry.
Thank you, Katja. Stephen?
So I'd agree with that, but I would also say you wouldn't fly with a pilot who's only read about flying from a book, and that's not how we teach it in the university either. We would have our equivalent to the simulator. We would have the simulator. We would also perhaps have the planes that people could take up. So it would still have practical hands-on experience. It's not just learning the theory. But going back to the point about the ideal mode, yeah, some sort of hybrid delivery is what I think would be appropriate, but the exact balance, it depends on exactly what you're teaching and who you're teaching it to. So certainly the online mode of delivery, it increases that flexibility, it increases the accessibility of what you're dealing with, but there are things that you can't as easily replicate, as we've already discovered, and so being able to bring people together for face-to-face activities is useful even then. And even if that's just the lecturing context, which it's quite easy to dismiss as, well, why do you need to bring people together just to listen to somebody talk? But as I mentioned, that somebody who's talking, they can adapt what they're saying based on what they can see of the audience's reaction. So a video of me talking would perhaps be different to me talking to you live, because I can adapt to things that you might interject and I can see reactions. So if somebody gets up and walks out here, I can adapt to that. If somebody gets out and walks up online, I probably won't see it. And if they get up and walk out when it's a pre-recorded video, I won't know at all. So it's that adaptation that you can do.
Great, thank you very much for your points. I guess it's a good, that would be a good lens for us to start from for the further discussion of coming 2 days. If we happen to have any questions in the room, please raise your hand and we'll give you a mic. And we have, if you have any questions in online, please do not hesitate to ask them in the chat. Amir? Yeah, we'll give you. Oh, no, we need our. I'll just take that from Stephen and give it to you.
I could have walked there.
Thank you. It's not a question actually, rather than as well emphasize on the Steve's point that he mentioned that, for example, in the UK, most of the universities this year, they were hit with really bad feedback on the student national survey. Then it's as well that has an impact and negative impact on their ranking. As well, there is a lot of cases as well in the court where many students, they are suing the university for their money back because they were all the years taught online. So that's, as you see, for example, if an extra evidence about the importance of face-to-face teaching. I would like as well, because we are talking about the cybersecurity. I mean, there is something. I mean, maybe the cybersecurity professionals agree. One of the known elements in fighting cybercrime, cybercriminals, to understand the culture of the criminals themselves, and then somehow as well, when you go to the senior management position, you have to have it's different from a manager to another or a CEO to another, because depend on their appetite of adopting that cybersecurity risk. On that, all that cannot be really gained through the online skills and teaching.
Great, thank you very much for your point. Oh, one more, great. Pavel, please.
Well, maybe if we start the remark session. I like the point that we're discussing, basically finding the optimal way to combine online and offline teaching. And I think here, in my experience, sort of the guideline is let students do it, well, things in the way that they will be doing later for their future work. So if they will be working, if they work on technical tools, how doing malware analysis or protection, that's what they will do individually on the computers. That's what can be done online. They will probably work online in 24/7 setup of Kaspersky or other companies. So that's going to be their usual practice, and that makes sense to actually teach things in this fashion. If we're talking about brainstorming and finding solutions to things that people have never found any solution online, and like, have you ever seen about people finding a new algorithm online? I don't think this has ever happened. So this is where the interpersonal factor comes into play, and I think a solution is always sort of a mix of those two things.
Great, thank you. I guess actually maybe we've never seen people finding out new algorithms just because we're just like 1.5 years in this, and maybe if we had some more, we'll see the results, but not exactly. It's not. I'm not sure about that. So I see we have no more questions or points, but we do have a question from online to Katja. Does Cympire provide services for the academic institutions only, or can we acquire training services individually as well? That's the question from online.
So we do have a very strong presence in the academic world, but our main focus as a company actually is the enterprise sector. So we work a lot with financial institutions, insurance companies, governmental institutions.
And if a single student comes?
It will depend on the context. So I'm happy if you reach out to us at info@cympire.com and we can set up a conversation.
Great, thank you very much. So thank you all for, thank you Katja, thank you Steven for your points. That was really interesting. And I'm glad that we, even from the very beginning, we had this vision of the fact that there's no exact solution. And what we need to do is we need to be doing hybrids, whatever it takes, and whatever what's the best efficiency we still need to estimate. So we're wrapping up this session and we're going to a break.